Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. Happy birthday to me. We've got another hurricane on the way in 2017. I had the podcast going. I had the radio show since spring of 2017. A few months later, summer 2017, August 25th, my birthday, Hurricane Harvey, the most flooding storm in recorded world history. The numbers for Harvey were astronomical. I'm not going to get into that right now, but fast forward the year 2020, of course, my birthday, and what do we have looming out in the Gulf? Another hurricane. Now, it's not going to make landfall. Obviously, it's not raining right now as of recording on my birthday, but it is going to make landfall tomorrow, not within the next 24 hours. Well, yeah, soon. Within the next 36 hours, we'll be dealing with another hurricane. The question for Houston is, where exactly, as with any hurricane or tropical storm, where will this hurricane move ashore? Where will Laura move ashore? Because that matters. I talked recently on a recent podcast about this philosophical question that a coworker brought up. Is it wrong to wish for the hurricane to move to another part of the state or to another state, just to another area? And at the end of the day, the conclusion I came to was that I don't think it's wrong to wish for a hurricane or any devastating event to move to or occur in a place with much, much less human suffering. So if the hurricane moved ashore and had Houston dead set in its targets for the dirty side of the storm, that would cause a catastrophic amount of human suffering. There are 7 million people in the Houston metro area. 7 million. We would prefer it to move on shore to a population of less than 100,000. If a couple 100,000 people were affected, maybe that would mean, just on the scale of things, the loss of life would be less, the destruction would be less, the cost would be less, the human suffering would be order of magnitudes less if the storm moves somewhere not into a major metropolitan area like Houston. Now, of course, you don't want it to move into somewhere like New Orleans, but somewhere in between, the least densely populated would be a better place for it to move in. And it would suck for those people. It would be terrible for those people, but it would be terrible for far less people. So it's an interesting philosophical question. Perhaps it's rhetorical. I've kind of put some data to it, so it's not so rhetorical. Some evidence, to back up my theory on it. So it's not so rhetorical, but in the end of the day, I think it is rhetorical. At the end of the day, are you wishing for somebody else to suffer instead of you? Can't get around the bush that if you live in the populated city where you don't want it to hit, yeah, you are wishing for somebody else to suffer instead of you. But you're wishing for less suffering. At the end of the day, you're wishing also for less suffering. So Hurricane Laura is on its way. That is not exactly what I wanted to talk about in this podcast, but I'm bringing my listeners up to speed, especially my international listeners. I'm sure most of you are aware, you've seen that last week there were theoretically going to be 2 hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico at once. Theoretically, there would be 2 hurricanes making landfall at once. And then it became there's potential that hurricane could get hit by 2 hurricanes back to back. That really didn't pan out. Hurricane Marco was a dud. It came ashore with very little fanfare, did very, very little damage, and people forgot about Marco because it was basically a non-event. It was a dud. It was like lighting a big firework and then the fuse just going pew. It was nothing. Hurricane Laura, however, is very fast moving. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Hurricane Laura is going to be more like for those of you around Houston, it's going to be more like Hurricane Ike. I'm not saying that we are going to experience another Hurricane Ike when I record another podcast in a few days. We'll see. Hopefully it's good news for the major, for 7 million people around here. But as far as, Laura being more identical to Ike or something else, Laura is going to be more on par with Ike. It will be a strong, they're projecting a category 3 right now. It'll be strong, but very fast moving. That's exactly what Ike did back in 2008. It was strong. It's basically a tornado that's 200 miles wide. I mean, the storm is way bigger than 200 miles. The storm is 700, 800, 900 miles in diameter, but the actual winds packed around the eye of the storm, it's basically like a 100-mile wide, 200-mile wide tornado. It's just 100-mile-per-hour winds that don't, and I'm speaking to this because I've experienced it in 2008, it is 100-mile-per-hour plus winds that do not stop. It's not just a gust. It's the average wind speed is 100 miles an hour, and then there's gusts to like 150. You can't even, and I know this because this is how I felt before going through Ike, you can't contemplate what it sounds like to be in a storm with winds that average 100 miles an hour with gusts to close to 200 miles an hour. It is unfathomable. You can't imagine it. It's just like I couldn't imagine what an earthquake felt like until I moved to California and experienced a few, they're minor earthquakes, but experienced a few earthquakes. You can't describe to somebody and have them appreciate what an earthquake feels like unless they've been in an earthquake. Oh yeah, I know what an earthquake feels like. You can't describe to somebody what a powerful hurricane feels like, what happens to your senses, unless that person goes through a powerful hurricane. The sounds coming from outside the house are unimaginable. It's a scream. It's at a decibel level that doesn't quit for hours. It's just this scream. It's not deafening, but it's like the roar of a jet engine in your neighbor's driveway for hours. It is so loud, and it feels like, and it sounds like, how is this house still standing? How is it not just ripped off the foundations like in The Wizard of Oz? How is this possible that this structure is still standing? During Hurricane Ike in 2008, I lived in a town called Kingwood, which is northeast Houston, and the nickname for the town is the Livable Forest. It's a pine forest of pine trees. 100-foot tall, 200-foot tall, sometimes 300-foot tall. No, maybe not 300. That's a bit stretched, but hundreds of feet tall pine trees. And the sound of the wind ripping through the pine trees is something I will never, ever forget. The power of Mother Nature. In retrospect, after cleaning it up, after the city's cleaned up and all that, there's a part of me that thinks, just studying it, if you're thinking scientifically about this and experiencing it, that was pretty neat. Terrifying, but neat. It's kind of like a check mark. I've experienced what a powerful hurricane is. Now, if you were a neighbor whose house got ripped in half by one of those pine trees, and literally on our street there were at least 2 or 3 houses, a pine tree that's 200 feet tall falls over and it slices through houses like a hot knife through butter. Like a Japanese katana slicing through wet toilet paper. These houses are built, they're built very strong, but the way that the pine tree the pine tree doesn't crush the entire house. It's really interesting. The pine tree, like I said, it's just like a line that cuts right down to the foundation through whatever part of the house that it fell into. I've never seen anything like that before. My neighbors, they were all okay. I think a lot of them left. They were all okay. I've checked our property in Missouri City in case we got a direct hit, the right side of the storm, the dirty side of the storm. If we got the brunt of the winds, checking the trees around our house and around the neighborhood, our house looks like it will be okay. We have a couple trees in the front yard that basically look like, I forget what kind of trees they are, but they look like big pieces of broccoli. So they're very kind of spongy trees. They're not the trunk goes up maybe 7 or 8 feet before it just all branches out to smaller limbs. So that tree is not going to, it will damage the roof for sure. If it falls over, it's going to cause some roof damage, but it's not going to slice the entire house in half. There's not enough weight there. There's not enough momentum there once it starts falling. If it got blown into the house, within 4 feet, it'd just be leaning on the house. There's not much. A pine tree can take 100 yards for it to build speed before it just slices through a house. That's not our situation in Missouri City. Other people around Houston, for sure, that could be their situation. But we are watching the storm closely. It looks like Houston, as of now, is not going to take a direct dirty side hit from this. I do anticipate some storm damage. I do anticipate some roof damage. And by that, I mean mostly widespread. It's going to be shingles kind of ripping off roofs. I'm going to pull my solar panel off the roof. I would advise anybody in that similar situation, if you have anything freestanding in your yards, this is all standard fare for people who live along the Gulf Coast. If you have anything freestanding in your yard, put it in your home or put it in your garage. So if you have lawn chairs and deck furniture and whatever, even if it's cement bird baths, tip it over or put it somewhere else, put it inside. Anything that is not anchored down, put it in. Put it inside somewhere. It becomes debris. So the solar panel on my roof, I just have it kind of propped up there. It's not being held down by anything. It lays flat, but nothing is a match. Thinking about my patio roof, if we had, because there's like an alley, if there's a wind tunnel, and it's really nice actually. There's a wind tunnel between my house and my neighbor's house, and it faces north-south. So if we have winds from the north, it creates it's a Venturi effect is what it's called. The Venturi effect through that tunnel, basically, through our patio, makes a really, really nice breeze. Even if it's a breeze from the south, warmer air, it's a very, very nice breeze. That same Venturi effect in a hurricane, depending on which direction the wind's coming, if it's coming directly from the south, the Venturi effect through there, 200 miles an hour easily, I'm saying. Wind would be our patio roof would be ripped to shreds. And I'm sorry if my wife is listening to this and I'm just scaring her, but I'm just thinking scientifically here. We don't anticipate that, though. We don't anticipate it getting that bad. I'll be surprised if it's that bad. But that's the thing about hurricanes. That's the thing about tracking hurricanes and tropical storms is you basically don't know until, I would say, 6 hours before it makes landfall. 12 hours. 12 to 6 hours, you have a pretty good, okay, no matter what, this is where it's going. We have a pretty good handle on it. But that's the thing. We don't know until it's right on your doorstep, basically. That's the way hurricanes are funny like that. They're anticipating the storm to, increasingly go eastward, stay on track, or go eastward. If it stays on track, it misses Houston by a little bit. We don't get the brunt of the storm. If it keeps going eastward, if it keeps going more eastward, tracking eastward, there's a good possibility that most of Houston won't experience anything but a couple of clouds passing. So we'll see about that. Let's move on to the meat and potatoes. So, Oculus and Facebook. I don't think it's a surprise to many who are in the know about VR that Facebook owns Oculus. They have owned Oculus for quite a while. No surprise there. I know from as being an owner of an original Oculus Rift that Facebook haven't been bullying me, so to speak. They haven't been bullying the user to log in with Facebook, but they have highly encouraged you to log in with Facebook. You log in through Oculus and it suggests, hey, you have better experience, want to share your stuff on social media, log in with Facebook or connect your Facebook account to your Oculus account. I have declined this. I believe I've never signed up for that. Share what you're doing on Facebook. No. Why does everybody need to know what I'm doing? Why? Why does anybody care what I'm doing? Not to get off on a tangent, but seriously, would you like to share your gameplay experience on Facebook? No. I'm playing Half-Life Alyx. I'll tell the people who need to know that I'm playing Half-Life Alyx. Why does Facebook need to know? Why do my extended family in their 60s, 70s, and 80s need to know that I'm playing Half-Life Alyx in VR? They don't care. They don't care. I know that when I scroll through my feed and see somebody's playing Fortnite, I don't care. I mean, good for them. It's not any sort of slam on my friend or family member who's playing Fortnite or Call of Duty or whatever, but I don't care. But I don't care. That quotation, that mindset of I don't care applies to 99% of Facebook. Facebook has gotten, in all social media, has gotten so far away from what its initial conception would be. Telling your friends how you are, checking in on friends and family. Now, it's just a battle zone. I don't need to go into more detail than that, but Facebook is not what it used to be. There's no way that I would volunteer when Oculus asks me, which is owned by Facebook, would you like to link your Facebook account to your Oculus account? No, thank you. Well, coming up in the near future, it's no definitive date, but if you buy a new Oculus system, whatever the newest and latest and greatest Oculus is or will be, it is going to start requiring you to use your Facebook account for access to use your Oculus headgear. You can't just sign in with Oculus. You have to link it to a Facebook account. You log into your Oculus VR headset with your Facebook username and password, and that will be the only option. That's coming up here in the very new future with new product releases. If you are like me and you own an older model of the Oculus Rift, that's not going to be a mandated feature. That's not going to be mandated for another, according to Facebook, another couple years or so. So if you own old hardware, enjoy for the next couple years or so without being forced to link it to your Facebook account, without having to log in with your Facebook account. Moving forward a little bit, Facebook has now started to get rid of the Oculus name altogether, at least internally. It has renamed its Oculus VR division. It has renamed it to Facebook Reality Labs. Facebook is going through systematically and removing references, at least in-house, to Oculus. It's all going to be Facebook Reality Labs. So Facebook paid, I'm reading the Ars article, I'll include the link below, of course. Facebook paid $2 billion to acquire Oculus way back in 2014. I remember back early 2010s or so, VR was the next big thing, and it seems like over the past decade, it hasn't really become that. And we have talked about that not ad nauseum, but in depth here on Geek Therapy Radio. I'm sure if you search through the podcast, search VR or virtual reality or Oculus, you can hear me go off on rants for several minutes talking about how VR hasn't really panned out and the reasons why it hasn't panned out. Briefly, it's just because the hardware, among many other reasons, the hardware it's bulky. As good as it is, as good as the new hardware is, as light as it is, as improved as the optics get, you are still painfully aware after a few minutes. It depends on how long. It's different for different people. But me wearing glasses, I am aware within the first 30 minutes that I'm wearing VR. There's no getting around the fact that I'm wearing a headset and I'm tethered to things. It doesn't feel natural. As light as the new VR headsets are, there's still a weight on your head that you're moving around. And it's really cool. VR is really, really cool. I love playing games in VR, but it is not natural. So somebody deciding to play a game in VR versus sit on the couch with an Xbox controller, you can play Xbox for 12 hours at a time and be perfectly fine. You can even you can be a PC gamer, mouse and keyboard staring at a screen for 24 hours at a time and not get very uncomfortable. VR, I would say an hour or two, even the best of us, an hour or two, and then we have to take it off. Our faces are sweating. You're painfully aware that you're in virtual reality. It is not a natural thing. It's a fun thing, but it's a brief thing because of how unnatural it feels. Moving on, and that's just why VR, one of the reasons beyond technological, why VR hasn't caught on the way we thought it would by the time Facebook bought Oculus, in this case, in 2014 for $2 billion. The main concept I wanted to put out there into the universe to you listening is the concept of the future of VR. A lot of us have probably watched the movie Ready Player One, which paints a pretty bleak future. You know that I don't have a bleak outlook for the future. I have a little bit more faith in humanity than that. But Ready Player One is a very, very interesting concept. That concept is that a gigantic global corporation hosts a virtual reality network that almost everybody in the world uses. A social network in virtual reality, if you will. So what Facebook is doing with Oculus seems very, very relevant to that scenario, to that situation, to that prediction of the future. If any company, if any corporation was going to institute this global virtual social reality, social virtual reality, it all works. If any company was going to institute a global enterprise like that, where everybody's connected to VR, how many people are on Facebook right now? I'm going to Google that right now. How many Facebook accounts exist right now? How many Facebook accounts? There are 2.7 billion registered Facebook accounts. Now, that doesn't mean that every single one of them represents a real human being. There's got to be bots out there, you know. But a rough estimate, I would say well over 1 billion, possibly 2 billion actual human beings registered on Facebook across the globe. So a definitive portion of the population is on Facebook. You could say 1 in 7 people, probably maybe 1 in 5 to 7 people are on Facebook, and it's probably that completely depends where you are in the world. I guarantee it'd be an interesting experiment to go to a cafe in the United States somewhere, or the grocery store, and just ask random people, do you have a Facebook account? It doesn't matter if they're on it every day or not, but do they have a Facebook account? I bet you 4 out of 5 people. I bet you at least 3 out of 5 people, if not 4 out of 5, if not 8 out of 10, maybe 9 out of 10 people, depending where you are, would say that they have a Facebook account. With Facebook purchasing Oculus, one of the biggest virtual reality companies in the world, at least at the time in 2014, the biggest social networking site in the world, taking control of that, it's been clear for the past several years, if not a decade or more, what Facebook's agenda has been. Facebook has not had an agenda of just hosting a fun social networking website where you can check on your cousins to see how they're doing and keep tabs with friends who live thousands of miles away in the world. Facebook has not, that is obviously not what Facebook has become. Facebook is all about consuming every dimension, every area and sector of culture. Facebook ads, Facebook political ads, politics on Facebook, Facebook wanting to know not just, how you're feeling. That's what it used to be back in early 2009, 2010s-ish, when you had to actually go to a college to have Facebook. It'd say, Johnny Hamburger is feeling, and then you'd write, happy, or glad finals are over. Now Facebook is a it's still multi-billion. That's chump change. Facebook is a huge global entity, and Facebook is trying to be directly involved for a profit in every human being's life on Earth. Big time. That's not a stretch, and that's not some sort of dire prediction. Just saying, Facebook wants everybody on Earth to have something to do with Facebook. They want to profit off of every human being on Earth living or that will be alive. So for a company like Facebook, a global corporation like Facebook, to be making such an incredible investment in the future of virtual reality, up to and including that you cannot use their hardware of any company that they own. You can't use that hardware unless you log in with your Facebook account. How far away are we? This is rhetorical. How far away are we from a world where that exists largely in VR? Facebook is a social network. How long before we live out our social networking in virtual reality? To a large scale, I think we are years and years, if not decades, away from waking up in the morning, if you even took your VR hardware off, waking up and immediately diving into VR, logging through Facebook, here you are, and you're walking around in virtual reality with all your friends, you're meeting them up, you're having political debates and arguing with each other, your avatar walking around and living your life virtually. It's crazy. One of the huge concepts of Ready Player One, was that in VR, you could present yourself however you wanted to present yourself. That a character, I don't want to give away too much. Let's just use a real world person. Let's say you are morbidly obese. You weigh 600 pounds. You are a male, 25 years old, and you weigh 600 pounds. You can create whatever you want online. You can create whatever profile you want online and present yourself to the world virtually as a 23-year-old girl who weighs 130 pounds and is just stacked to the rafters, if you catch my drift. You can present yourself in the world as an attractive 23-year-old female, even though in real life you are a 600-pound, 25-year-old male. Not going to talk about LGBTQ or anything like that. I mean, is it your right to present yourself however you want to online? Of course, you can present yourself however you want to online. Is it honest? I'll leave that alone. I think that's the thing. In the real world, you can't escape behind anything. And if you go to a party or something and you are that 25-year-old, 600-pound man, but you want everybody to address you as a 23-year-old, 130-pound female, sure. Because everybody's on the same playing field. They can see you in real life. They see how you are taking up space in the 3D reality. But they will address you however you want, out of respect for your feelings, out of respect for who you believe you are, because they can see everything. All your cards are out on the table. VR, you can't do that. And the question will arise, does it really matter? And all I'm getting at here is, it would be a brave new world. It might not at all matter about who you are in reality if most of the time is spent in virtual reality. All the new laws that would have to be written, all the new social constructs that would have to be adhered to and developed based on treating virtual reality as an offshoot of real reality. A lot of us spend so much time on Facebook now anyways. We do it as sort of an escape, a way to kill time, snoop around on people, make us feel better about ourselves. At the end of the day, probably just make ourselves feel worse about ourselves. FOMO, fear of missing out, comparing ourselves to other people who are putting up their fake profiles and faking how happy their lives are and faking how good their lives are. That's already an issue we're dealing with in society for real here now in the year 2020. We're looking at a phone screen and feeling bad ourselves, comparing ourselves to people who are faking it online. Facebook has just taken one step closer to a world where there are 2.7 billion users, and it's just going to go up from there, to where Facebook users exist. Instead of just staring at their phone, they're going to jump into a virtual reality. It's going to be way more of a sensory overload than just staring at your phone. I'm telling you, if you've never tried VR yet, it's uncanny. It's uncanny, and it's unsettling. I'm not unsettling. For some people, it's unsettling because of motion sickness, but the sensory overload is for real. So just imagine that. It confuses your senses. It absolutely confuses your senses. Is this real or is this fake? This dinosaur coming at me looks so realistic, even though we've never seen a dinosaur before. It looks so realistic, like it's about to eat me. You jump and you fall, and in Half-Life Alyx, there's many parts, but I'm climbing up a ladder, and you look over your shoulder, and you're 6 or 7 stories off the streets of Paris, I believe, or France somewhere. And just looking over your shoulder after climbing up a ladder on the outside of a building about 10 stories up, it triggered in my brain and in my brainstem that very real feeling of imbalance and a fear of heights. My palms got instantly sweaty. This wasn't anything that I thought about or had to trick myself into believing. It tricked my brain. It tricked a sub-level function in my brain to believing it was reality for a second or two before I had to remind myself, I'm only in VR. I'm not actually hanging 10 stories up. It triggered an involuntary reaction to a very real fear. Imagine scrolling through Facebook right now on your phone, making yourself feel bad because you're comparing yourself against other people's fake lives. But now you're in virtual reality, and now it seems more real than ever. Imagine it triggering all those involuntary but real reactions on a daily basis. Facebook has taken one step further to ushering in that reality. Now, to wrap up the podcast, I'll bring us back down to earth a little bit. I'll take off the mask, the VR headset for a second, and let's just take stock of reality for a minute. Just because Facebook has started to get rid of the name Oculus internally, and just because within the next couple years you will be required to use a Facebook account to log into virtual reality, we are a long, long way, if ever, from getting to a Ready Player One type of future. For now, for the next several years to decades, most likely, Facebook and social media is going to be relegated to our smartphones and to our computers. It's not going to require a headset. It's going to be a very small fraction of a percentage, fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a single percent of people that are going to log into Facebook with a VR headset. At least for the near future and for several years or a few decades after today. We are a long, long way from daily logging into virtual reality, from using a Facebook interface that exists exclusively in virtual reality. We are a long way from that. Right now, it's on our phone, and you can just put your phone down. You can limit your screen time. There's things you can do so you don't get too wrapped up in the fake world of Facebook. And it all depends on how you treat Facebook. There's people out there, I'm not saying that everybody treats Facebook like this or it's like a heroin addiction, but some people it is like that. We're a long way from Ready Player One. We're a long way from it affecting large masses of people. Being strapped into virtual reality for 24 hours a day or 16 hours a day, you got to sleep sometime. Between waking and sleeping, we're a long way from that, from daily, prolonged existence in virtual reality. So while you hear a story, you hear these continual stories of how Facebook is investing more and more into virtual reality, and it immediately paints this picture where Facebook controls everything. Everyone has a face mask on, or a VR headset on. Everyone's just sitting there drooling like WALL-E and just existing in virtual reality. We are so far away from that. And right now, we still have full control over that. Just because you go out in the next year or two and buy a Facebook VR headset or an Oculus, or whatever they're going to call it, any sort of VR from any company, HP, doesn't matter. You are still in control of that. You don't have to buy the VR headset in the first place. You don't ever have to get involved in it. And people like me who are experiencing this sector of technology as it grows, I still feel personally, every time I strap on the Oculus headset, that I'm in full control of this. One reason is I don't have to sign into Facebook. I'm not bound to that. I still feel that when you go through the process, you still have enough control over what you do and don't allow this virtual reality to what role it has in your life and how much of your life it can put out there online. I still feel like I have a lot of control. When I put on the Oculus headset, I don't feel like I'm kneeling down to the man or sacrificing my integrity or my morals at all. Because I still have the choice. I don't have to log into Facebook for this. I don't have to log into Twitter for this. I don't have to do anything with this. I can just enjoy my video game in VR, and Facebook doesn't have to know about it. Friends don't have to know about it. The only reason my wife would know about it is because I tell her, can I play VR for a little bit? Not that I have to ask for permission necessarily, but I just let her know what I'm doing. Because if you're in VR, you want people around you to know that you're going to play VR so they know not to come slap you on the back or something. You can be really deep into Half-Life Alyx in a very scary, dark sewer somewhere, and the last thing in the world you'd want is a real-life person, like, poking your chest. They would likely get punched in the face involuntarily. But I still feel like I have complete control of my current VR experience. We are a long way off from everybody strapping on a VR headset, WALL-E style, and just getting fat and fed intravenously and presenting our fake avatars to each other, and golly, that wasteland of a human existence. We're not there yet, and I don't think we will get there. Anyways, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. It's an interesting concept. It's just an interesting concept we're talking about today. Thank you so much for listening to Geek Therapy Radio. You are worthy of love, no matter what happens in this world. Virtual reality, Facebook buying up everything, Facebook buying your lungs, putting a reverse mortgage on your... putting a reverse mortgage, I was going to say, well, nether regions. We're a long way from that. That's not where we are. Despite all that, you need to know that you are worthy of love. Real human-to-human love. You are worthy of giving love, and you are worthy of receiving love. And despite how bad social media makes you feel, you are worthy of self-respect in loving yourself, in self-confidence. So embrace a geek thing, share that geek thing with others, and I think we will be all right if we take things day to day. Thoughts and prayers and good luck for anyone along the Gulf Coast, including myself. We'll get through this. We'll rock it. We always do. We'll see if I make a podcast tomorrow. Maybe. This week is up in the air. Either way, stay tuned to Geek Therapy Radio. I'll fill you in on all the details, what's going on. Until next time, take care.